Now, we like to take you behind the scenes at EASD, so I'd like to introduce you to someone that you'll never see, but is absolutely crucial to EASD, and that's Tony Kirby, who runs the press centre here. And the press centre is a hive of activity all the time. I mean, hundreds of journalists here and covering all over the world. So what kind of press coverage have we had for this EASD?
Well, this year, Viv, we've had the same wide variety of coverage that we've had in previous years. Different things are obviously popular with different press. We have a wide variety of medical press in the press centre. It tends to be the medical press that fill up the press room actually in person at EASD, but also I have a contacts list of global journalists, so my press releases from the meeting go out to journalists worldwide. And so far this week we've had coverage in the Times in the UK every day, which has been fantastic. The BBC, which everyone will know, has covered two of our abstracts this morning on when does diabetes start and misdiagnosis of type 1 diabetes. And then there's a range of publications worldwide as far as Australia, Qatar, South Africa. Basically anywhere in the world can pick up these stories, and it just depends on the news agenda of the day who picks up what.
And what's particularly caught the press's attention? Is there something that they've all decided is a great story?
Again, it's more of a variety. For example, this year we had 6 or so papers co-published in medical journals like The Lancet Diabetes and Diabetologia. And those kind of things are obviously more popular with the medical specialist press, and they've all run their stories and they attended those press conferences. But it tends to be the more fun things like in the abstracts, the more human interest things such as misdiagnosis of type 1 diabetes, cancer and diabetes. Those are the kind of things that are more picked up by the general press, although the medical press do cover those as well.
And I saw that one of the things they picked up was about sweeteners. Tell us about that story.
So yeah, sweeteners, Richard Young, the presenter of that work, came to EASD last year in Lisbon also and discussed other findings from similar work that he's doing. Him and his team in Adelaide are experts on sweeteners. And this work today that's been in the press worldwide is talking about how the use of artificial sweeteners can disrupt the microbacteria in your gut and in a negative way, and which could eventually have serious metabolic effects. And his work is continuing in that area. But because so many of us use artificial sweeteners or take them in every day without really noticing, like in diet sodas and all kinds of foods, it's actually a really important area. People think they're escaping the bad effects of sugar when they use a sweetener, but then there are other things to consider with sweeteners, this work is saying.
And the other story that the press seemed to pick up a lot was about the fridge not really being the best place to store insulin,
and yes,
because it was too low a temperature.
Exactly, and that's what one of the, I mean, obviously the topic is serious, but that's one of the stories I would call a more light-hearted, fun story. It's something that the public can really easily understand. It affects everyone in the world who uses insulin and has to store it in a fridge. And what they found was very, very odd results, which were the reverse of what they were expecting. So what they were expecting was that insulin stored in the fridge would be more or less the same temperature and within the recommended range of 2 to 8 degrees at all times, and the insulin carried on the person, which needs to be between 2 and 30 degrees, there'd be more fluctuations outside the range. But what they found was that domestic refrigerators are in fact having variations in temperature which take the insulin below 2 degrees, sometimes down to freezing, which can critically damage the insulin, or well above the 8 degrees upper limit. And these variations were much less frequent in the insulin carried on the person. And it seemed to be a pattern that was common wherever you stored the actual pattern of variation, although it varied, the temperature varied, was similar in all compartments of the fridge, and it seemed all types of fridge, so it was a very bizarre finding and has been popular with the press.
So if your lettuce is kind of freezing at the back of you know how your lettuce goes all funny in the fridge?
Exactly.
I'm talking about lettuces here rather than EASD, but if that's what's happening in your fridge, it's probably not a good place to store your insulin.
Yeah, exactly, and those kind of things are the things people need to think about. Maybe they're pushing the insulin to the back, thinking it will be safe and in a good place and not disturbed, but actually, you know, those back compartments can freeze, like you say.
And to take us back to a more serious note now, the press coverage of this meeting is actually really important because it's not only a way of alerting the public to what's going on, but actually policymakers. And policymakers are really important in diabetes because they're the ones that, sanction the use of new drugs or, look at the prevention and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. And so things they might take more notice of are the papers published in medical journals about new drugs, about new treatments. We had a very interesting study from Eli Lilly about a new drug that combines the action of 2 existing drugs, and there are very promising results that showed this new drug to be, very competitive or better than other drugs. It's still only a phase 2b study, but those are the kind of things maybe policymakers are looking for: new drugs with better actions that can, help more people. Also, we launched our we launched our EASD-ADA joint consensus document on managing high blood sugar, hyperglycemia. That had input from experts from both EASD and ADA, was presented in a press conference, which was our busiest press conference. And that document outlines how clinicians should manage individual patients and the different factors to take into account when managing high blood sugar. And that's the kind of thing that can really affect medical practice and, again, policymakers eventually.
And of course, it's no good having guidelines unless you really get those guidelines out right across the world.
Yeah.
And that's what the Press Centre does, and that's what you do. And thank you very much for doing such a great job for EASD.
No problem. Thank you, Viv.
Thank you.